Hello and welcome to another episode of The Only Playbook. This is the episode where we talk about the position that does not get enough love, the top 10 fantasy tight ends of 2022. I'm your host, Sweetcar. I got Shishot, Shovit. What's going on, guys? How you guys doing?
Just chilling with awesome internet. Life is good.
Dude, the viewers don't know about the shit show that we had to go through last time we tried to record this episode in your internet, but it sounds like it was like a not just you thing where you got that email or notification of the upgrade or update.
So. Yeah. Shout out to everybody but Spectrum. Nobody gets Spectrum. They don't deserve anything. Screw Spectrum.
Is that your only option there?
Yeah, Spectrum's the only option. They charge more than everybody else, and they allow the least megabytes per second or whatever than anybody else. So,
boo. Monopolies, man. Monopolies. It's terrible. Terrible. But anyways, yeah, again, excited to come back at you guys. Tight ends, top 10 for 2022 fantasy football season. I know with tight ends, a lot of times people, have weird different approaches where if you don't get the cream of the crop, you're either streaming your tight ends or, you're holding out hope for a tight end that's going to be very touchdown dependent. But we'll go over all of that today. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Number 10 on our consensus board for tight ends, we have Zach Ertz. All reliable Zach Ertz comes in at number 10. I had him as 10 on my list. Shishot, you had him at number 9. Shovit, you also had him at number 9. Ertz is an easy one for me. Again, when you're getting to the lower echelon of tight ends, you're looking for guys that, are consistent, can produce, and can get the occasional touchdowns. And with Ertz, in a situation with Arizona, there's no DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 weeks, so this could be a guy that you stream early in the season. I know they drafted a rookie tight end, and they also have Max Williams, so I don't know if they're going to deploy like a heavy tight end formation set, but that could diminish his looks if they utilize the other tight ends more. But knowing there's no Hopkins and knowing that offense is still going to need a place to throw the ball, they lost Christian Kirk. So I think Ertz is a very, very solid and safe choice to fall into the top 10, whether that becomes like a first half heavy point and then the tail end of the season he tapers off. Overall for the consensus year, I think he's going to fall in the top 10, and that's why I ranked him 10. Shishot, you have him at number 9. Talk to us.
Yeah, not much different than 10, huh? But it's pretty simple for me. It's a veteran presence, reliable targets. Veteran tight ends are probably the most reliable things in football, and having a guy like Zach Ertz who's had multiple playoff appearances as well as multiple Pro Bowl appearances. So, he's ready to just basically volume his way into a top 10 tight end position. There's a lot of good tight ends this year. I think this year is probably one of the most unique years as far as drafting tight ends goes, because it's always been top 3, top 4 at the most, but there's a few that could alter some things. However, Zach Ertz is a very safe top 10 choice, and I have him at 9 for that exact reason. Same reason Sweetcar mentioned, no DeAndre Hopkins. A lot of the receivers are gone. He saw a 23.7 target share and finished as a top 10 tight end in 71.4 of his games last year. These are all good numbers, and now you're missing some of the best players on that offense. So that means Zach Ertz, regardless of Max Williams, should be getting a good enough amount of targets for him to be back on the top 10.
More of what you guys are saying. I think that the Cardinals like using their tight end. When Max Williams was on the field, he got a lot of the targets. And you mentioned 23.7% target sharing. So the last 4 games really stand out to me with 11 targets, 13, 9, and 10 targets for Zach Ertz. For a tight end, in PPR, he finished top 5 last year. You've got to be happy with that. The only concern is he didn't get to the end zone like some of the other guys. But the fact that Christian Kirk is not there, the fact that DeAndre Hopkins isn't there, and it's the Cardinals that like to use their tight end formations, I like Zach Ertz at number 10 this year.
Yeah, like you guys mentioned, with the veteran presence, I don't think he's going to go away. It'll just be interesting to see if Max Williams becomes more of the blocking tight end. They drafted Trey McBride. That was his name, Trey McBride. I believe at Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken. And so to draft him as your first pick in the second round, when they didn't have a first round pick, means that they clearly intend to use this guy. And so it'll be interesting to see the dynamic. But again, with no big weapons in the receiving core, at least for the first 6 weeks, at least again with Christian Kirk gone, I wouldn't be surprised if Trey McBride's lining up in the receiver slot as a receiver, and they still use Ertz. So either way, I think it's.
Don't forget, they just extended him for 3 more years too, so they plan on having him as a big important role in this offense.
Yeah, exactly. 3 more years would not indicate that they see him going away anytime soon. So I think it's safe to say that Zach Ertz will sneak into the top 10. Has some potential to be a little bit higher than we have him ranked. Moving on. Number nine on the list. I don't know why this guy always reminds me of Shovit. Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox is number 9 on our consensus board. I have Dawson Knox as number 9. Shishot, you have him at number 8. And Shovit, you actually have him at number 10. Shovit, start us off with your boy, Dawson Knox.
Yeah, Dawson Knox is going to be, for me, below Zach Ertz because I feel like this guy is a boomer bust guy. He is a guy that gets a lot of targets in the end zone, but you have to kind of rely on him to get those touchdowns, and it's not necessarily getting targets because you've got Stephon Diggs, you've got Gabriel Davis, you've got McKenzie, and then you got Josh Allen just taking the ball. And so I feel like the target share is not there for him, and the volume isn't there as you want. But the fact that he got top 5 touchdowns last year for tight ends, that is that boom and bust potential that you want to explore and get him in the later rounds if you can. You don't have any other tight end options.
Yeah, I echo that. It's one of those things where you're probably going to play him as a matchup, because you're depending on tight end, or you're depending on him to be touchdown dependent, which means, again, you can have a week where he gets 1 catch for 16 yards, no touchdowns, or like 2 catches. And so playing, matchups for tight ends becomes important. It's hard to know early in the season what matchups are going to be favorable because we have no idea what defenses are going to be good, specifically against the tight end position. So it's going to be a guy that, knowing the offense that he plays in and knowing the quarterback he has, people are going to be likely to deploy Dawson Knox as a viable tight end option. And I think that's why he falls into my top 10 as well. But like you said, it could be a year, with no Cole Beasley. I know that they still have enough weapons there. Maybe they see more potential in Dawson Knox. I feel like he's a little bit better than a boomer bust tight end in the sense of his talent, but how is he going to be utilized? I guess that remains to be seen. But the talent's definitely there. And I think, again, if you're relying heavily on tight ends, you're relying on tight ends that either get you volume or are touchdown dependent. And right now, as of last year, he was a touchdown dependent guy. It'll be interesting to see if he can, be a little bit of both.
Yeah, good points. Dawson Knox is a favorite of mine when it comes to drafting him in fantasy, or he was last year. I'm not sure if I can say the same this year. I have him at 8, above Ertz, but now I'm kind of questioning that, to be honest, because there's some recent news. He's a little hobbled. Not sure what to make of that just yet. But don't forget that this super low target rate per route run at 14% that's nothing to be happy about. They're not. He's very, very touchdown dependent. 9 touchdowns last year. Most of his fantasy points were strictly because of that, or one long broken play, and that's because he's probably the fastest tight end in football. His Madden speed was like 89 or maybe 90 last year. It's pretty crazy for a tight end. So he's a fast guy who catches a lot of touchdowns. And however, there's one thing that you guys haven't mentioned that is the biggest reason you shouldn't draft him so early, and that's because an actual receiving tight end by the name of OJ Howard is now on this team. So you don't just pick up OJ Howard and just barely use him. He's a good name guy, and with a lot of speed and a lot of talent. And I don't see why the Buffalo Bills would see all this impressive stuff in Dawson Knox and then go get another tight end who could possibly take his job. So, if he wasn't so touchdown dependent last year, then I could see him pushing away OJ Howard. But because he was touchdown dependent last year, even though Dawson Knox may improve from last year, half of his touches may go straight to OJ Howard, if not more. So that's a little bit of a concern. We'll keep an eye on that. And if we get more information before week 1, we'll let you guys know. But as of right now, I would kind of drop him a couple of spots than I originally had him, strictly because of the OJ Howard thing.
Yeah, OJ Howard's been another guy that, when he was in Tampa, it seemed like he had potential. He's playing for the greatest quarterback of all time, and the production never quite was there, whether it was injuries or one of many things. So it'll be interesting to see. Like you said, that is a really good point, because again, the minute you have 2 tight ends that are capable, it diminishes a tight end's value, specifically in fantasy, drastically, right? Yeah. Drastically, because again,
look at Schultz. Yeah, look at Schultz and Jargon or whatever. He took like so many of his touchdowns, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
So if you're getting a tight end that's touchdown dependent, and now he's going to compete for playing time, routes run, and things like that, that's going to hinder his fantasy potential. So again, that is definitely something to keep an eye on. But that's why he's, barely creeping into the top 10, sitting here at number 9 for us on the consensus board. Jumping on to number 8, Shishot, you just mentioned this guy, number 8, Dalton Schultz comes in at number 8 on our consensus board. I actually have him at number 6 on my list. Shishot, you have him at 10. Shovit, you have Dalton Schultz as number 6. Talk to us. Why are you so high on Dalton Schultz?
Yeah, so Dalton Schultz among tight ends finished top 3 last year with 104, and he finished with 8 touchdowns, which is one less than number one guy who had 9. We just talked about him, Dawson Knox. So, given that Cedric Wilson is not there, given that Amari Cooper's not there, he had last year was 16.4% target share. That the ball's got to go somewhere. So Dalton Schultz should get some more targets, which will just make him have better stats than he did last year. I think last year was a solid year for him when it was like a up and coming, like we saw this new emergence of Dalton Schultz. It should just kind of increase from there. And then Gallup is injured. We don't know if he's going to start. There's just a lot of opportunities in the beginning of the season for Dalton Schultz to succeed. So less competition and breakout ready is what I think of Dalton Schultz.
To show you had Dalton Schultz last year on your fantasy team. Talk to us.
Yeah, I had Dalton Schultz and had Dawson Knox, number 1 and number 2 tight ends and touchdowns. But yeah, I mean, I really like Schultz from the perspective that he's a reliable target. Like when I think of tight ends, Dalton Schultz is like one of those prototypical tight ends you think of. You don't get crazy linear speed. You don't even get good hands, to be honest. I saw a lot of drops he had last year, but the volume, fantasy is a game of volume, and there will be no other tight end who may get as many attempts at even seeing the ball as Dalton Schultz next year. The next guy after CeeDee Lamb is James Washington and Jalen Tolbert. Dalton Schultz is going to get more targets than he had last year. He may end up with more touchdowns than he had last year. And if he ended at touchdown or tight end 5, right? What was his tight end position last year? 5? That's only going to increase. There hasn't been many changes. Maybe like some of the guys that we're going to name after him could have better years, but from just looking at the paper and just extrapolating the data, removing the other targets on the team and just seeing that chemistry between him and the quarterback increase over time, it just makes sense to say that he's going to have a better year than he did last year. However, one caveat is that his hands weren't so great last year. A lot of times where he had easy curl routes for 12 yards, easy curl routes for 5 yards, I saw a lot of drops. So, we'll keep an eye on that, but that may also be a reason why Dalton Schultz and the Cowboys haven't settled on a contract. They basically franchise tagged him, and Dalton Schultz has been wanting a contract this whole time, and they're not giving it to him. Why are they not giving it to him? I don't know.
Yeah, tight end's a tough position to pay, especially when the player is demanding it, unless you're standing out on paper like you're Travis Kelce or George Kittle. Dalton Schultz finished as a tight end 3 last year on ESPN. So, I mean, the dude produced. And like you said, as we watched pretty much every single week of football together, there were so many drops from Dalton Schultz. And I remember even a couple in the end zone. And so, just think about one more touchdown or a couple more catches going his way. He could have finished as tight end 2. And now, Shovit, you mentioned the lack of competition with the receiving core, really no other tight ends. I honestly don't know why he shouldn't. I think he's got a really good shot to finish as a top 5 tight end this year. I mean, as long as he stays healthy and plays every game, the guys that are typically ranked above him are a lot more injury prone. No more Gronk. I mean, unofficially because he's retired. So, you're taking another big name out of the equation for tight end, the tight end landscape, if you will. And so for me, I have him at number 6, but I think there's guys in front of him that I could see possibly like a Darren Waller or somebody that he could overtake because, he's on the up and up. And this guy, Darren Waller, we'll talk about him a little bit more, maybe kind of falling a little bit. And so interesting that he had like a career year for himself last year, and he was sharing so much of the targets from all of these receivers. And now 2/3 of those guys are no longer here. And so it'll be interesting to see. I think the sky's the limit for him. Like you said, Shobit, Dak's a guy that, loves to throw. So the yards, the targets, the touchdowns have to go somewhere. And so unless CeeDee Lamb's having 2,500 yards this year, Dalton Schultz should set himself up for a pretty nice year. Number 7 on the board, Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert comes in at number 7 for our consensus. I had him at number 7 exactly. Shishot, you also had him at number 7 exactly. Shobit, you had Dallas Goedert at number 8. Shishot, kick us off with Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, I mean, he finished as PFF's second highest graded receiving tight end last year with a 91.1. I believe Justin Jefferson finished somewhere in the 90s as well. So, I mean, that's a pretty good receiving tight end if we want to talk PFF. And he was tight end 10 overall. And that's with the uncertainty about how they were going to use him to start the year off, right? Because we had the whole Ertz trade thing, all that happened. And now Goddard is free. We've seen what he can do. We've seen some crazy plays this guy makes. He's a freak of an athlete. He just doesn't get enough targets. He got around 76, 75 targets last year, while Dalton Schultz got over 100. And I can only imagine what it would look like if he got an extra 40 targets, right? So yeah, I mean, I like him. The Eagles are very much a complete team, at least on paper. I can't say for sure. But now the stress is away from the quarterback, from Dallas Goedert. There's a huge ass presence over there. It's going to be taking a lot of the defense's attention. I think that only frees up Goddard. That only just makes the rest of the team better. And I think that he's going to jump up from the 10th best tight end to at least the 7th best tight end. I think, life is looking pretty good for everybody in Philly. And I think Dallas Goedert is going to be one of the primary benefactors of all that happening over there.
His stats from last year, they're not that great because he was sharing roles with Ertz. And when Ertz left, after week 7, he averaged 11.8 fantasy points. So you're kind of betting on that to kind of continue. In the last 4 games, 21 receptions, 339 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I can see Philly utilizing him to his full potential and, securing him in that top 10 spot for sure.
Yeah, and I think what's one thing when you have a quarterback that you still aren't completely certain about, like quarterback that's still getting better and that's still learning, they're typically reliant on their tight end, a big body, a big frame across the middle, quick, easy hitches, things like that. And like you said, Shishot, it's only going to help them that they have AJ Brown now. It's only going to make the defense more heavily focus on AJ Brown on the outside, free up the middle for Goddard. And again, I'm fully expecting Jalen Hurts to take the next step this year. I believe in him. I know there's mechanical issues and a lot of timing things that haven't been the best, but having a true number 1 in AJ Brown, having a whole nother offseason of learning and not feeling like, they completely shifted the mindset of the entire offensive schematics mid-season last year, where 6 weeks of Hurts just go out there and try to, you act like your backyard football and just run around and make things happen, to, okay, never mind, that doesn't work. Let's just run the shit out of the ball. Now you have AJ Brown. Now there's no Ertz, and Dallas Goedert, like you said, is freed. And so you have big weapons that you can utilize that can make Jalen Hurts look a lot better too. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship now with the weapons and Hurts. And I think Goddard's going to play a really, really big role in that. He's got great hands. Like you said, Shishot, he's a freak. And so it's a guy that you love to have as a quarterback, a big body tight end with great hands and an athletic specimen. And so no more Zach Ertz, finally get to free Dallas Goedert. I think he's primed for a great year. That takes us to number 6. Number 6 on our board is TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson out of the Detroit Lions. I had him as my number 8th tight end. Shishot, you have him at 6, and Shovit, you have him at 7. Hawkinson's an interesting one. I think before his injury, he was on pace to pretty much be maybe top 3 tight end. Probably if he played all year, he would have finished as 3rd tight end, maybe even the 2nd tight end. So the usage was absolutely there. Once he got hurt, we saw the emergence of Amon-Ra St. Brown. And so even though it's a deficient quarterback, we know what Goff's, kind of his ceiling is and what his limitations are. They made an emphasis and a point of emphasis to throw the football last year. And we saw a lot of times where they were forced to throw because they were always be down. And I think that situationally, I don't expect a lot of their games structurally to change. I think they're going to be down a lot. I think they're going to improve, but they're still going to be down. I know you got Jameson Williams now on the outside. And I think, again, that only helps the entire offense as a whole. And so if Jameson Williams as a rookie is not still getting, total amount of target share that he deserves, what he's at least going to do is to take the top off the defense and push the safeties back. And that opens the middle of the field. And that's where Hawkinson is going to be primed to work. And so I think barring any sort of injury, again, Hawkinson's a really, really good young tight end that has time and it has a trajectory to be a top 3, top 4 tight end in the league just as a player. And I think that's only going to translate to being a successful fantasy football player. And so I don't know if the touchdowns per se will be there, but we saw a shit ton of volume to Hawkinson when he was on the field last year. And I think a repetition of that, as long as he plays the whole year, is due for him.
Yeah. I mean, he played 12 games last year, right? And he's finished now back-to-back tight end 7 finishes and only in points per game, which is pretty good. And that's with 12 games. You add more games, you probably get more consistent points per game. He now shoots into a top 5 situation. And that's with 4 touchdowns last year. 4. I could probably score 4 touchdowns. If I add 100 pounds and run around for the Lions, it's not that hard. So, I mean, let's be honest. He is their most reliable receiver. We saw what Amon-Ra St. Brown did towards the end of the year, but Hawkinson's now done this for back-to-back years. His biggest weakness has been injuries, just not being on the field. And I can't speak for that. So it gives me a little bit of a concern. Hawkinson is just as talented as some of these other guys. Like he's talented, he's up there with Mark Andrews talk. I mean, let's be real. Like as far as coming out of college and the eyes and the focus, all the eyes were on Hawkinson. Hawkinson was a huge talk. The next Gronk, there was talks out the wazoo, but he just got hurt and he plays for the Lions. That's not something fun to situation to be in. And one thing about Jared Goff is he does like his tight ends. If you look at his history from all the way from the Rams to now, he really likes his tight ends. They get fed plenty. And I think with that 4 touchdowns turning into maybe 6 or 7 with an improved offense, and like you said, Sweetheart, having Jameson Williams and DJ Chark, not that one means anything, but these are deep threats. They're going to extend the field. That's just the way the game is played. When you have speedsters, they open up the field. And with a guy like Hawkinson, opening up the field is all he needs because he's bigger than everybody else. He's stronger than everybody else in that area, and that means he will get the ball. So looking at what he did last year, I see improvements, and being down every game, I see more targets later in the game because he's a more reliable target. Everything should be better. Everything should get better for Hawkinson. It sucks that his quarterback's Goff, but Goff does likes his tight ends, and the situation is not as bad as it's been over the last 2 years. So Hawkinson should be shooting up from the bottom 7 to 10 to, I want to say, maybe late 5 if he's lucky to 6. So that's why I have him in that number 6 spot.
Yeah, the talent is definitely there. I mean, in 2020, he finished as tight end 4, so we know what he can do. I actually think that the more balanced offense that the Lions have will allow them to move the ball more and convert on third downs and second downs, just giving the receivers and tight ends just more opportunities for targets. And so the addition of all of these talent that they have, Jameson Williams, DeAndre Swift being back, you already have Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that's just going to benefit the whole team in general. So you've got to like the Lions offense for what the potential is for next year, and because of TJ Hawkinson's talent and the fact that you mentioned Goff likes to throw it to their tight ends, you got to like drafting him in the top 6 or top 5 even. He averaged 12.1 points per game last year. So for a tight end that's consistent, I'd like that. You got to be happy with that as well. So he's a pretty good pick this up and coming year just for those reasons.
I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say, right? A guy tight ends typically don't get drafted early in just regular football. And so this is a number 8 overall pick in the first round by the Detroit Lions, right? And so we only rarely see tight ends drafted that high. And I think if this guy switched spots with Travis Kelce, I'd be remiss if I didn't think that he could pretty much replicate exactly what Travis Kelce does, barring the injuries, right? That's the one hindrance so far with Hawkinson, like you mentioned, Shishod, is the injuries, but that's something we can't really calculate. We just got to hope that he's going to actually stay healthy, but the talent and what they expect and see in him is all there. And so there's no reason with the talent that he has, if he plays 16, 17 games, he shouldn't finish as a top 5 tight end. The top 5, the number 5 tight end on our board this year is Darren Waller. Darren Waller, after having an injury-riddled year last year, I had him as the number 5 tight end on my list. Shishod, you also have him at number 5, and Shovit, it was a unanimous consensus decision. We all have him as the 5th best tight end in fantasy. So again, it's pretty easy with Waller. I think the Waller talent's been there. There is fear that the peak of Waller has already been eclipsed, and maybe he's on his way down. The hands were a little bit questionable at times. I don't know if he was ever fully back from his injury to where he felt comfortable. It didn't feel like it was the same Darren Waller that we got post-injury from pre-injury. That dude was a freak physical specimen, as fast as receivers. And again, having that come out of your tight end position in the middle of the field against really, really short linebackers and shorter safeties, it's a recipe for success. And they did get Davante Adams. So again, like we mentioned with the whole Goddard situation, you're having a true number 1 receiver on the outside to take the defense and take that secondary and probably get a double team. And so that's going to free up a lot of single coverage for Waller. And if Waller's still even a fraction of what he was, which again, it's not like he's taking a tremendous step down, it's just trajectory. There's no reason he shouldn't finish as a top 5 tight end.
Yeah, I mean, he played 89% of the offensive snaps last season despite the injury, 24.2 target share last year as well, which was 3rd among the tight ends. So, I mean, you've got to like the fact that they are going to still utilize him even with Davante Adams. The concern is there wasn't that many touchdowns, only two touchdowns with 15 targets in the end zone. But I'm excited about Davante Adams coming into that team and just making that offense a lot better. They just had so many things going on with that team last year, with the Vegas incidents, the Gruden
stuff, the rugs, it was all shitty.
It was a mess, and I think that they'll settle down a little bit more, and Derek Carr will have more opportunities to give the ball to his his tight end. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Darren Waller has a rap career, and this guy raps, and it's actually pretty good music. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like
Wow.
you could probably bump to it and be like, you would never have no idea that was Darren Waller because
Is there a comparable rapper? Who would you compare him to?
Wow, I don't even know if I can do that. I'm not in the rap game like that. But if I'll listen to the music, listen to Darren Wall's like number one song that he has on YouTube, and you'll be amazed because I was mind blown that it was.
Is he like Juvine 57?
I have no idea who that is. That sounds like a football play.
I literally just made that up.
If he's anything like Damian Lillard as an athlete who raps, then he's probably
Oh,
pretty
dude,
good.
there's no
Yeah.
way. There's just no way. There's no way.
Maybe-
Damian Lillard might be the best rapper alive. If you really want to get weird and technical, he's that good. He's that good.
Yeah.
But
It's not as it's not as lyrical, but it's still like bumping.
It's
Yeah.
vibey.
okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
That makes sense.
I like it. You heard any Antonio Brown raps?
I have not.
Yeah, they're not very lyrical either, but they be bumping sometimes. Anyways, my take on Darren Waller is just like you guys. I mean, I have PTSD from like maybe 10 fantasy players I've played against. The Doug Martin things that happened to me, the Jamal Charles. Well, I got Darren Waller one time, and I needed I was up by like 28 fantasy points, and he ended up with like 30 with like 11 receptions and some crazy. This was within the last 2 years. I think it was 2019, to be exact. Or no, 2020 or something like that. But anyways, this guy has potential to be number one. Like, we're talking full-fledged potential. Like, I mean, I'm sure like being a former receiver helps out a lot when it comes to the receiving game. And looking at how their run game went last year, I'm not sure if they're going to utilize him as much of a blocker. I think they understand that having Adams and having Waller is insane. That's not like, even the Chiefs don't have an Adams and a Waller. If you really think about it, they got a Waller, but they've never had a big body number one. So this is a pretty serious duo. This is probably, top 5 duos if we're talking from a scary standpoint. So, would you be surprised if Darren Waller becomes the number one tight end in football? Not really, but I would also not be surprised if he got hurt because he has a history of doing that. The only thing I can say for sure is of the positive regression when it comes to the touchdowns. He ended up with 2 touchdowns last year. Shovit, I think you said 15 targets. I have 10 targets here. But regardless, that's a lot of missed opportunities. And I don't think in that end zone situation, teams are going to be doubling up Waller instead of doubling up Adams. So he's going to have an easier chance of catching these touchdowns. He had 93 targets last year. I'm sure Adams is going to eat up, at least 25% or more of that. Probably a lot more of that just from Waller alone. But the touchdowns will be there. I can guarantee you there'll be more touchdowns. I can probably guarantee you there will be less targets. So, we'll see. We'll see. If it's anything close to 8 touchdowns, we're talking top 3, top 4 numbers. So, I mean, you're not going to jump the gun. You're not going to draft him as early as Kelsey or those other guys like Andrews. But it's not surprising if he goes as the 4th or the 5th tight end.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo all of that. Number 4 on our list is George Kittle. George Kittle, a household name, a favorite of mine. Love the guy, but from a fantasy perspective, there was really, really a lot of hit and miss with George Kittle last year, and it was really, really interesting to see because it didn't make a ton of sense why. But Kittle comes in at number 4 here on our consensus board. Shobit, you have him at 4. Shishot, you have him at 3. I have him at 4. Shishot, you have George Kittle as the number 3 tight end. Talk to us.
Yeah, man. If it wasn't for injuries, I would probably rank Kittle number 1 every single year just because he's the most complete tight end in football. I will argue that till the day I die. This guy's just so fun to watch. He'll pancake defensive ends. He'll pancake defensive tackles. And right after that, he'll go catch a 20-yard catch down the middle and truck a safety. Like, he has no regard for his own body, and that is his only fault because he gets injured so often when you need him the most. I mean, he still ended up with 94 targets last year, but it didn't seem like that, did it? It seemed like he barely played. And that's because the usage isn't there. The scheme doesn't work for him. He's used as a blocker too much, this run-first offense. Imagine this man being unleashed. Just imagine, right? And we can only do that because he's stuck there for a little bit longer, I believe, and he's hurt. There's a lot of things that prevent me from wanting to draft Kittle. It's going to be a tough decision if I'm, if he's the next available tight end and I'm looking at a nice sweet spot and there's not another good player available. Do I draft him? I may just skip him. I know I have him ranked number 3 overall, but this is mainly potential. I'm going off of potential here on my list. And it's scary. I'm not going to lie. We've all been burned by George Kittle. Whoever drafted him in the first year was very happy, but since then he's had a lot of issues. The numbers are there to keep him in the top, 6, 7. He finished 3rd last year in as far as fantasy pros are considered. And he could easily be number 1 again, but the situation sucks. Look at the situation here versus the next 2 people we're going to talk about. The situation is far better over there. And we're not going to see George Kittle run the ball anytime soon. So I think it's going to be a lot of the same, maybe more touchdowns because of the newer quarterback, and there's going to be a lot of broken plays. And these quarterbacks that don't have their footing, Sweetcar, you mentioned, they find their tight ends, and George Kittle is easily findable. He's very, very findable, if that's even a word. So for those reasons, Kittle, you shouldn't shy away from Kittle at the value you get him if he falls to you at a reasonable spot. But I am not reaching too far to grab him because there are better options with better value. But on this list, this guy is number 3 overall. If according with value being taken into consideration, George Kittle will be the 3rd best tight end in fantasy this year.
Yeah, so I had George Kittle last year, and there were a lot of downs and there were a lot of ups. I mean, the ceiling is incredibly high. 35.1 points, 27.6 points, like later down the season, and that really allowed me to get to the playoffs in one of my leagues. So I was very thankful for that. But then there were a lot of games that he sat out, and a lot of games that he didn't catch a ball, but just had a bunch of pancakes, right?
You got to the playoffs, and then George Kittle didn't show up.
And he didn't show up. He ended the season with less than 5 points in the last 3 games, which was absolutely terrible. So, I mean, this is a guy that can win you a week, couple of weeks here and there, but this is also a guy that's not going to show up in a lot of weeks as well. So you have to, consider that as a strategy. I mean, he's top 3 because he's going to finish probably as top 3 with those high ceiling numbers, but you're going to get, that's just the kind of player that he is. And you just have to work around that.
I got to add something to that. I think the reason you have those off weeks is strictly because of the injuries. I'm a firm believer that this man is not who he used to be. I mean, he finished number 1 in 2019, and since then injuries have plagued him. So, I mean, we'll see if the season starts off slow. If it starts off slow and I drafted him high, I'm getting rid of him. I'm trading him ASAP because, it's only going to get worse throughout the season if he gets more injured. So I think that's something to keep in consideration. You'll get those ceilings some games, but the reason for those bad games, I believe, is not due to anything else besides strictly injuries.
Yeah. So go ahead. No. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was just gonna say, there's this whole Trey Lance thing too. Like Trey Lance coming in, I don't know what his role with that offense and how Kittle is gonna fit in all of the RPOs that they'll decide to run. So I'm a little bit concerned about that too. Mark Andrews kind of benefits from that, where I don't know if George Kittle gets the same sort of love from RPOs as Andrews does.
Yeah, basically to piggyback on both your guys' points, right? Twofold. The injuries, obviously, concern. I think the other biggest concern why he doesn't show up is because, like you said, he's probably the most complete tight end in the league, right? And that those pancakes, all the amazingness that George Kittle does that doesn't get fantasy value is still valuable to his team. That's why the 49ers were 1 play away from the Super Bowl, right? And George Kittle was still an integral part of that. But the 49ers are a run-first offense, and that's why there's so much value in Kittle as a blocker, and that's why he gets hurt, because he has no regard for his body, right? He has no regard for his body when he catches the ball, when he's blocking. And so he's still incredibly valuable as a player, but as a fantasy football tight end, like you said, there are weeks where, they're in a shootout because they're playing against an offense that's putting up 30-plus points, and they can't just run their way to victory and control the clock. That's when Kittle's getting his 9 catches, 181 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then you have weeks where they're playing a team where Elijah Mitchell can just run down your throat the entire time. And, they're running the ball 35 times or 40 times. Kittle has 1 catch for 19 yards and the 49ers still win the game. So they're not going to deviate from their game plan just to force feed Kittle. And Kittle's the kind of guy that's totally content with getting 1 catch for 19 yards, but having 6 pancakes and their team wins the game. And so that's the beauty of George Kittle as a person and as a football player. But that's the kind of hit or miss as a fantasy player, because again, he's in a run-first offense. Again, put George Kittle on the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to be the best tight end statistically in football.
Exist.
Yeah. So it's just one of those situation things where, again, I don't know what that's going to look like. Like you said, Shobit, now with Trey Lance versus Jimmy Garoppolo, a big shift in quarterback usually makes me I guess, slightly feel less about their weapons, but also, like you said, should show broken plays and more plays of extending the play versus just the 3-step drop back from Garoppolo may benefit him. So I think in the end, it maybe just kind of levels itself out. But I think the highs and lows are injury and also because of the situation offensively that he's in San Francisco.
And don't forget, he's still injured. He may miss OTAs, and we'll just see how things go.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, if he's getting some sort of an injury designation heading into like draft day for you, I know people are going to pass on him just for that. So like you said, you're not going to reach for him, but if there's value, if he's just continually getting passed up and he's falling like a round or two behind where typically he goes, then you jump and you draft him because it's all about value in fantasy football. So that's why he falls number 4 on our consensus board. Let's jump into the top 3. Number 3 for us, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts comes in at number 3. He was my 3rd tight end. Shashot, he is your 4th tight end. Shovit, he is your 3rd tight end. Shovit, talk to us about Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts. You know, what's not to like about this guy? He had 1,000 yards as a tight end in his rookie season. And we talk about tight ends don't do well in the rookie season. Got, past that 1,000 mark. So he should be Atlanta's top target. The issue is he only had 1 touchdown in the entire season.
That's fucking insane.
Yeah,
it is.
Like something with Atlanta not knowing how to throw touchdowns to their best player.
Well, I also think it's because he's getting double teamed, right? Like if he's the best player, then he's probably cornerbacks and safeties are going to guard him. And so there's probably going to be more of that this year too. So more double teams. And I think that they drafted Drake London, and I'm really hopeful that Drake London will have a good year this year, even as a rookie, to kind of take some of the defenders away from Kyle Pitts so that he can, succeed. So I like Kyle Pitts, even being double teamed, he got all those targets and was able to pass the 1,000 mark. He should continue that even with Mariota as the quarterback.
Yeah, I think so. 2 things. Mariota. Again, another kind of improviser scrambler, right? Matt Ryan is pretty stationary at this point in his career. A lot of when he's moving is in play action. So I think the Mariota movement, I don't know if they're going to sustain as many drives to get to the red zone with Marcus Mariota, to be honest with you. I'd be really, really fucking ecstatic if Desmond Ridder somehow like wins the job and I can get behind a rookie quarterback because I really liked him in Cincinnati. But with that being said, Mariota scrambling in the red zone means like feasting opportunities for his big tight end that's a specimen, that's basically a tight end in a receiver's body, right? And so you have to, like, I'm sorry, you just have to assume that he's going to have more than 1 touchdown next year. Like, if he finishes a year
I'll bet
yeah,
the rest.
I mean,
never mind.
that. So, like, for him to finish as what, the tight end 7 last year as a rookie, only had 68 catches, but still had over 1,000 yards and only 1 touchdown. That's like a weird anomaly type of statistic, right? His numbers are kind of an anomaly. And so I think the touchdowns go up. Maybe the yards stay where they're at, or maybe they're slightly lower because of this whole Mariota shindig. But I have to believe that Mariota is going to rely heavily on a guy that's a physical specimen in Kyle Pitts. Like you said, Shovit, the Drake London acquisition, he's a huge, huge body. So now you have 2 big ass guys in the red zone. So maybe if they're double teaming Pitts for the first 4 weeks and London is feasting, they're going to have to slowly figure out a way to shift that. And I think the give and take of those 2 guys dynamically will end up evening itself out. And I think that's what makes Kyle Pitts primed, because he's so damn talented, primed for a top 3 finish. And so again, the skill set's there. Number 4 overall pick. We talk about that all the time. You don't draft tight ends that early unless, again, they're game changers. And this guy's truly a game changer. So there's no reason that he doesn't finish outside the top 3 because he's going to get more than 1 touchdown. I think we can all, bet the house on that, barring injury.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. That's pretty much sums up Kyle Pitts. The only thing I got to say is, it's just 2 players. One's a rookie and one's used to be a rookie last year. There's not many places. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's not many places you can throw the ball to where you have reliable targets. Kyle Pitts is probably their most reliable target at this point because they just lost Gage. So yeah, that 110 targets might actually end up being more. So yeah, there's a lot to like here. I'm all for Kyle Pitts, strictly from a team that's going to be struggling most of the year and just going to be throwing the ball a lot. And I'm also going to go on the record and say I don't think Mariota is going to be starting by week 4. I think they're going to go with their, I think Raiders going to come in soon enough.
Or is that another landing spot for potentially Jimmy Garoppolo?
Possibly.
Would be intriguing. Number 2 on our tight end board. Here we go. The cream of the crop, the man, the myth, the legend, my favorite tight end in all of football. Mark Andrews comes in at number 2. Mark Andrews was my tight end last year, and man, he was stellar. He was beyond stellar. You thought you lost, Lamar Jackson midway through the season. You're like, fuck, here goes all the value for Andrews. But what actually happens? His value and his productivity doubles. And so there's something to be said about a team that has literally no receivers and all they do is throw the ball there to tight end. That's where Mark Andrews kind of falls into. He's my number 2 tight end. Showed he's your number 2 tight end. Show, but he's your number 2 tight end. So I think we all kind of see the field similarly when it comes to this guy. This guy's the cream of the crop. He's one of 2 best tight ends in football. There's no reason that shouldn't repeat this year. Rashad Bateman, I think, is going to take another step. That only will help Andrews. Maybe not as much volume, maybe not specifically as many touchdowns or whatever. But Lamar Jackson, the biggest problem with Lamar Jackson last year, and then he got hurt, is the whole, once they put that single high safety and had everybody line up in the box, Lamar Jackson pretty much did not know what to do, right? So I think spending an entire offseason scheming for defenses that are going to try to do that and how they can counteract that, it's going to be a lot of over the middle stuff. Who's your guy across the middle? It's going to be Mark Andrews. So there's nothing that leads me to believe that this guy is not going to repeat. There's, a case can be made that he could finish as the number 1 tight end. The only problem is the number 1 tight end is basically the only real weapon on his team now with Tyreek Hill leaving. And so maybe situationally he doesn't, but Mark Andrews, there's really nothing not to love about this guy.
Yeah, I also had Mark Andrews in another league, and he just held me on. He was one of the only reasons I made it to the playoffs. But yeah, I also love Mark Andrews. I mean, his target share is ridiculous. He's close to 25% with 28% air yard share, 17.5 fantasy points per game. And he ran a route on 84% of offensive dropbacks, whereas George Kittle could never. So, these are all signs for you don't even have to be a good tight end. If you can get this many, drop routes run on that percentage of dropbacks, you're going to get catches more than anybody else. A lot of that was due to necessity, though. We have to keep in mind, they didn't do the throwing they did because they wanted to. They did the throwing they did because they were in close games, even with teams like the Lions. So a lot of that came from necessity, but that only proved to us that Mark Andrews can hold that title of being a potential number 1 tight end. We threw everything at him, just tried to maximize his talent, and he proved it every step of the way. Last thing I'm going to mention is in 2019 to the 2020 season, the Ravens were the traditional Ravens. They passed on fewer than 46% of their plays because of the necessity to pass. That number increased to 56% last year. So I wouldn't expect that level of throwing. However, the Ravens now know what they have in Mark Andrews, and they know that they can just wear him out and he'll be fine. So I don't think it's going to be 56. I don't think it's going to go down to 46. But I think we're going to get to a sweet spot where he's still a top 2 or a top 3 tight end.
Last year was a breakout year for him. And I'm glad you guys got the opportunity to, have Mark Andrews while I'm sitting here with George Kittle. And some days he does good, some days he doesn't. But so that must have been nice. But I think like you guys said, he's due for another one of those years this year, especially with the fact that they don't have Marquise Brown. And there was a game without Marquise Brown last year where he saw 10 targets and had a target share of 27.8%. So no Marquise Brown this year. You got to be excited about, utilizing Mark Andrews. And he also gets the ball in the red zone too. When he had 11 targets inside the 10-yard line, and he converts those. You have the fact that he can get touchdowns, and you got the fact that he gets the targets as well. What more do you want as a tight end? Maybe we'll find out from the Kelsey conversation, but you got to be happy with drafting Mark Andrews as a tight end.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with Mark Andrews this year. Again, barring injury, there's really no reason why he doesn't repeat, or barring, some of these guys a little bit low on our list that just have a breakout season or something like that. But Mark Andrews, maybe he doesn't put up, the numbers that he put up last year to finish tight end 1 with 107 catches and 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. But the reception should still be there. Maybe the yards did go down, but I also would honestly think that the 9 touchdowns could get up to double digits. I think, yes, he saw more in kind of the intermediate term when they had Tyler Huntley, but Tyler Huntley also didn't lead to as many scoring opportunities as Lamar Jackson would. So more opportunities in the red zone. I think Mark Andrews is poised to have 10 plus touchdowns this year. And maybe repeats as the number 1 tight end, barring the number 1 tight end on our consensus board having some sort of a drop off, which again, probably not going to happen. And that is none other than Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce was consensus, unanimous, all of our number one tight ends. For me, it's pretty simple. He's the best. He's been the best tight end in football. I know, these other guys come really, really close, and no knock on them, but this year is another year with Patrick Mahomes. And this is the biggest year for Kelce because there is no Tyreek Hill. So it'll be interesting to see if he can repeat that production. If the Chiefs offense continues to run the way it does when Tyreek Hill is a guy that, when he's on the field, the defense has to account for him. And now, yes, Mecole Hardman still has similar speed, but it's not like defenses are fearing him. Juju Smith comes in. He's not like a speed burner or anything like that. So he's more of an underneath guy as well. So I don't know how that's going to hinder Kelce, but Kelce has by far been the best tight end in football for years now. And there's really no reason to lead me to believe otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, he's the best tight end, and he's Patrick Mahomes' favorite target. And the fact that Tyreek Hill is not going to be there, who took away 25.1% of the target share. And yes, you're right, Juju's coming in, Sky Moore's coming in, Marquise Valdes-Scantling is coming in. But I think that still means that he should get more targets than he did last year, which just basically means he has the potential to finish more than 92 catches, get more than 1,025 yards, and get more than 9 touchdowns, which he got last year. So there's nothing that should stop Travis Kelce from finishing number 1 this year. The only thing is some Mark Andrews goes off or something like that. But he's in a great opportunity. There's a great opportunity for Travis Kelce, and number 1 it's got to be number 1. I mean,
yeah, I love Andrews, but the scheme of this offense is just so receiver friendly. Like, running the ball is not even in the back of their mind. I mean, they do it sometimes to kind of change the defense, but the volume is ridiculous, right? 134 targets, 92 receptions, and he rarely gets hurt. I mean, he gets hurt within the game, but he continues. He played 16 games last year. He's been the best tight end for 3 years in a row until last year when he was the second best. So, like, hovering at the top, we're talking elite level play. You said best tight end, but he could be the best football player in all of football. There's a lot of help you get from Patrick Mahomes, but we are not going to have the talk with the whole, like, what would Shaq be without Kobe and what would Kobe be without Shaq? They're both equally as important. And I don't know if he's going to do better than last year, just from, there's a lot of changes that happened in the team, but I know he's going to do just as good as last year, barring any injuries. So yeah, there's really no conversation to be had. Just look at the information from last year, look at the information from the year before, look at the information from the year before. The only thing that could happen is, like, Sky Moore has, like, the greatest receiver rookie year of all time. And even then, we're still looking at least 100 targets to Travis Kelce. So there's really no reason to be worried here. This is one of the safest tight end picks in probably fantasy football history. So it's just an easy number 1. Just click and move on.
Yeah, I guess, again, we can't account when we make our rankings for injuries, but he is 32, going to be 33. He has been like the definition of durable, right? And it's been like 6, 7, 8 seasons or whatever of just consistently being really good. So is Father Time finally going to slowly catch up to him? Is he going to have to miss a couple of games here and there? I don't know. Are they going to have to force feed him a little bit more to accommodate for the fact that Tyreek Hill's no longer there, and that can be detrimental to his body? I don't know, but those are factors to think about, but not enough to think about to not draft him as like the number 1 or number 2 tight end on the board. I think, again, it goes without saying that he's been consistently the best tight end over the course of the last 6, 7 years. And so history's on his side, his quarterback's on his side, the team's on his side, and no longer Tyreek Hill being there is also on his side. So I think that's why Travis Kelce was unanimous for us as the number 1 tight end. And that's it. That's the top 10 tight ends. Did you guys have any sleepers or any guys that, could have squeaked into the top 10 that you left out?
Yeah, I like Shobit's guy. I like Freiermuth. He's a good player. He's a good player. He's a well-rounded player. And Steelers have a good history of putting out good products at the tight end position. That's one guy I wanted to hover around 11 and 12, but I just couldn't because there's too many better players than him ahead of him. And don't forget Irv Smith Jr. I don't think you'll get the volume there, but we didn't get to see what he was capable of last year because of the serious injury. But I mean, he's a speedster. He's a more of a receiver tight end, unlike a lot of these blocking tight ends we've discussed. So, he can extend the field. These are some names. Don't be surprised to catch 2 touchdowns and go for 150 yards at any game.
What about you, Shovit?
Yeah, Firemouth was going to be my guy. I mean, later rounds, maybe you go with Tyler Higbee, just because it's the Rams, and the Rams there's more target share that you can kind of hit more targets that he can receive now that Robert Woods isn't there. But that's a stretch. I mean, that's probably like the 12th or 13th tight end for me. But I like Firemouth. I just don't like the quarterback situation that we got right now. I don't think that. Mitch Trubisky, I don't know what he's going to do. So we'll see.
Yeah, and it sucks that Small Hands is playing with the third team's offense as well. So that's not a really exciting thing to learn in the offseason, but it's early. And I guess Shelby, you had mentioned this guy the other day, and he's a great tight end. Again, I just don't think he's in the best situation. It's Mike Gesicki, right? Mike Gesicki's another receiver in a tight end body kind of guy who plays more out of the slot as basically a receiver, and he's a freak. We've seen some crazy one-handed Mike Gesicki catches, but they have Tyreek Hill now, and they have Jalen Waddle, who's basically another Tyreek Hill, and they also have a deficient quarterback in Tua, who doesn't get the ball down the field much. So situationally, it's not ideal for Gesicki, but the talent is there for him to somehow squeak into the top 10 if he becomes a reliable red zone threat for Tua or something like that.
And before we finish, if you're done talking about him, before we finish, I feel like if you want some sleeper shit, this is the moment right here. Drum roll. I think Austin Hooper this year would be a good draft pick at the end of your draft, later end of the draft, where nobody even knows what's going on over there. This is Tennessee tight end. There is nobody else to throw the ball to. They're a run-heavy offense. I get that, but Tennessee does love their tight end. They just don't have too many of those. They don't have too many of anything to throw the ball to, so you can't really go wrong just holding on to Hooper and seeing what the hell Tannehill has to do there, because nobody knows. He could end up being 10 targets a game person because there's literally nobody else to throw the ball to.
Yeah, that's a good point. That actually helped me remember one other tight end. We could just probably do this all day, but Gronk's gone. And Brady loves tight ends. Cameron Brate is another guy with no Chris Godwin. OJ Howard's gone. It's basically Cameron Brate now and Mike Evans early in the season. I know they got Russell Gage. So touchdowns for Brady, north of 40 is something that we expect year in and year out now. So that's got to go somewhere. So for touchdown dependent, if you're tight ends on a bye or something like that, Brate might not be a bad replacement as well.
Well, since you guys are giving out your sleeper picks, wait, there's more. I'm going to go ahead and say the Denver Broncos tight end, Albert Okwuegbunam.
You have to be able to say his name right. Albert
Okwuegbunam. What do you think? Is that good enough?
I'm gonna look up the pronunciation, but keep going.
Yeah, I think that the fact that Russell Wilson is there, he does target his tight ends ever so often. Like I think it's like 15 to 20%. So you've got to be happy with having him. He's the only tight end there. So I with the addition of Russell Wilson, you could have him have a breakout year this year as well. He only had like 2 touchdowns last year, but this year might change with the addition of Russell Wilson.
Okay, ready for it? You guys ready to learn this and never have to fuck it up again for the rest of the season?
Give it to me.
Albert Okwuegbunam.
Okwuegbunam.
Albert Okwuegbunam.
Okay,
that's a cool name.
Okwuegbunam. There you go. Albert
Nice.
Okwuegbunam. Sleeper. He
Cool.
ends up as a number 1 fucking fantasy tight end, and we have to learn his name perfectly.
Well, since we're really giving out sleepers, I'm
actually gonna fall asleep at this point.
So Sweetheart, Cameron Brate, I have some serious intel that Cameron Brate's not the guy.
Oh,
I have some
Kate
serious.
Don't Kate Otto me right now.
I'm Kate Ottoing right now.
Oh my god.
Apparently he's got Gronk moves and he's got Gronk skill level. And he is apparently Scott Smith of the Buccaneers official website says that rookie tight end Kate Otten is the best answer, in quotes, to replace Gronk in Tampa Bay. I don't know. It's not even preseason. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But just Tampa Bay tight ends. Just don't forget to keep your eye out for those
Tom
guys.
Brady's tight ends are always somebody worth mentioning. So, yeah, that's a great point. I forgot they drafted him in the 4th round. So, yeah, absolutely is an option there. Any other sleepers? Are we really digging here?
No.
Jacob Hollister? All right. That's it for the top 10 tight ends. Let us know your thoughts, all the support so far, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the podcast platforms. Thank you so much. We're the Only Playbook. We'll see you guys next week.